So, okay, let me ask you this. When did the gospel become real for you? Let's go back. Where did you grow up in church? Did this happen like FCA or college, or what's that look like for you?
Yeah. So I got saved. I walked to the front of the church and I knew what I was doing in May of 1985. So literally 40 years ago.
Okay.
So I've spent 40 of my 45 years walking with the Lord.
Wonderful.
And so it has been real to me forever. I mean, I know that sounds crazy, but I can tell you, like in elementary school, one of my favorite books to read was a book called Sons of Thunder that was about James and John. I mean, it was because I grew up in the church I did, the family I did, the community I did. That was always part of my life. I had the boring testimony, quote, quote, that people, like, but there was always sin. There was always things that so easily entangle,
Well, you may have heard her podcast. You may have read one of her books, but Annie F. Downs is one of the leading voices in Christendom today. She writes, she teaches, and she records and does incredible stuff for so many people. She's become a leading voice, not just for women, but for singles and for everybody in ministry and in Christianity. And her podcast, That Sounds Fun, and of the many shows that are on the That Sounds Fun network, is a leading edge for people to kind of get more clarity on life, on relationships, and certainly on following Jesus. And recently, she decided to start reading the Gospels all together through in 1 month. That's 3 chapters a day to do that. It's revolutionized her life. She's going to share about that today and many other things. I'm so honored to have her as a guest today. We've been trying for years to make this happen, and finally, I got to sit down with Annie F. Downs. I know you're going to love this. I know you're going to want to share it with somebody. Make sure you click subscribe so you always get our content. And now here's my conversation with Annie. Oh, are you in Nashville right now?
Yes.
Okay. And that's home, like grown up there?
No, I grew up in Atlanta. I'm from Marietta.
That's right, because you're a Georgia fan and you went to Georgia.
That's exactly right. I'm a Bulldog,
that.
yeah.
Wow,
that's where I went to school.
You've had some good years of football.
Yeah, no kidding. I mean, listen, and I'm the longest. I'm the literal human who waited the longest for a national championship because I was born 4 months after the last time we won. And so no one waited as long as I waited. Everyone else had 1980 and I did not. So waited the longest.
That's great. Well, it was well rewarded because you got 2 in a row. Should have had 3, but oh well. Who's counting?
But I'll take 2. It's one of the best feelings I've ever had, that first one when we won. I was at the game. I lost my mind. It was incredible.
I can only imagine because I've been a part of, sports fans of franchises that never win, and you feel like it's never going to happen. And when it does, it's like, I think I can die now. This is the greatest thing ever.
It's unreal. It's such a joy. I loved it.
Well, that's great. Okay. Well, it's an honor to have you on the show. I know many may know your podcast. That Sounds Fun, but let me start with that. Is that what started everything that's going on? Because you're like this multi-conglomerate, global entity now. So did it start with the podcast and then turn into books and now companies and all this kind of thing?
It was books first. I was a writer first. And so my first book came out. I wrote my first book in 2006. Okay. It did not come out until 2012. It was that many no's, that many iterations. I mean, it was painful. It was very hard. And so it came out in 2012. I started traveling and speaking pretty quickly on the heels of the book releasing that summer of 2012. And then I started the podcast in the fall of 2014.
So the name is That Sounds Fun. Where's that come from?
So Ted Decker is a fiction author. Yep. And his PR team reached out to me in 2014 and said, "Hey, Annie, we would love for you to interview Ted for his new book that's releasing." And I was like, well, I'm a huge fan. At the time, I'd read just about everything he'd written. And I was like, but where do you want me to release it? I have like a blog and an Instagram and a Twitter. Like, I don't know what you want me to do. And she said, have you ever thought about starting a podcast? And hand to heaven, I said, that sounds fun. I was like, that sounds fun. I say that all the time. Okay, that sounds fun. Yeah, okay. And so I went home and looked and it didn't already exist. So I started it.
Wow. Just the odds of that not already being out there is pretty remarkable.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's grown into like you have multiple shows on that podcast network, right?
Okay, well, yeah, I'll explain to you. The network is separate from the podcast.
Okay.
I am actually one of the shows on the That Sounds Fun network.
Okay.
So a network works just like the networks you see on TV, right? Like
Sure.
on Food Network, you're going to see a bunch of different shows about food, and all the advertisers want to talk to people who eat. Right. The same is true with the network. So my podcast, That Sounds Fun, was on 2 other networks before 2020, where I was a part of their network. So they sold ads for me and gave me the ability to pay the people who make the show for me, my editor, my engineer, my podcast manager, all those people. And then in 2020, the podcast network I was on, I left, and we got this offer from another network, a really big network. And they were wanting to take a big percentage of the ad sales. And so I sat with my manager and I was like, hey, when I've been on networks, here's what's been missing. There has not been transparency. I've never been able to like log into a dashboard and see what kind of ad sales were going. There's never actually been community, and podcasting is really lonely.
Yep.
And I want to get better at this and have more listeners, and I don't know how to grow. And I think we could build a network that would actually allow all 3 of those things for every host. And so that's how we started it. And we just called it That Sounds Fun Network because people already knew the brand. And the first 5 shows that joined the network that we were selling ads for and providing community and education for as well were my friends in podcasting. But now we're at over 50 podcasts. And that's not counting the ones that we white label. There are entire networks that we white label. So you don't even know that we sell the ads for them.
Wow.
It's all behind the scenes. And so we have entire networks that we sell ads for that don't have anything to do with me. So I'm really like, I mean, it is named after the show. That's how it started, but really it is so eclipsed. That Sounds Fun, the podcast, or AFD, a bunch of the podcasts that are on the network. While I totally agree with all of them, we sign off on all of them, I don't know most of the hosts anymore.
Wow. Okay. So your leadership in that field, do you have much day-to-day relationship with that? Do you make many decisions with that?
I'm in every staff meeting every week. So there's me and my co-owner, Kelly Haywood. And then we have 4 full-time staff members.
Okay.
And so I'm in every staff meeting once a week, once a month. We're doing like we did today, where it's a half day where we kind of like knock out a bunch. And then when shows join the network, I'm part of that decision making, whether it's a friend of mine I've gone out to get and said, hey, we'd love for you to be a part of this, or whether it is someone who's come to us or been suggested to us.
Right.
And then they kind of run everybody in leadership, everybody in the C-suite level agrees when a show to add a show to the network.
Gotcha. Okay. Well, that's fascinating.
It's really fun.
I'm a pastor of a church, and I feel like when I get to do podcasting, it's fun, but I don't have the mental bandwidth to kind of sit around and go, all right, let's build this thing out to like take over the world, because I'm so focused on the one thing of leading a church. Are you the kind of mind that likes to have 4 or 5 different things going on at the same time? Is that kind of the way you're wired?
Well, yes. And part of it, I think I am wired that way. I think that is like, I kind of highly value efficiency, which is not what the gospel highly values. And so I recognize that is a weakness of mine, but I really value getting a lot of things done and getting multiple things done and done well. So I think that's always been in me. But when it comes to this, I mean, particularly building the network, the conversation with God was a lot of, you could stay focused on building things with your name on it, or you could remove your name and be behind the scenes building something that far exceeds what you could ever do. Wow. I mean, and so that has been what the network has been, is this like, did it stunt the growth of my own podcast and my own work? Probably. Because I tell people to go listen to other shows instead of just listening to my show. Right. But that's what gospel work looks like, is like, if this isn't your church, can I help you find your church? Right. If this isn't your podcast, can I help you find the right podcast? If this isn't your city, can I help you find the right city? And there are podcasters who say jokingly on their show or to people like, don't listen to anything else but me. Right. And that is my natural tendency. But what I have seen with building the network has been, if you step back what you're an expert at building and help other people build, that's all credited to me in God's eyes. Do you know what I mean? I lay it all down. You know me, Rusty. It doesn't matter. But while the charts won't say that's all Annie, what God and I know is that behind the scenes, our team is making a way for a lot of these shows to do what they might not be able to do without a team behind them.
Love that.
And so it's all gospel work. It's all putting light into dark places. And so it's all credited to the team as like, hey, without you behind this may not happen. And that's true for my show too. Without the network behind me selling ads for me and teaching me and building my community for me, it might be the same for me. So yes, I like having multiple things going on, but this is also what my gospel calling is to expand the edges of the tent and get as many people in it to make as much as they can make.
That is fantastic. I heard somebody say this recently. I don't need my name on everything, but I'd like my fingerprints on a lot of things.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
The ability to kind of help others out there. That's such a gift.
Oh yeah, I'm like, I don't need my name on a building when all this is said and done. Like, who cares, right? But if we created something that drew people to the gospel, and whether they ever know I'm involved or not, that's all I want. Is that great. I mean, my mission statement is Annie F. Downs is a trusted bridge. And that's what we want. If someone stops with me, I have not actually met my mission. My number one bridge is to Jesus. Like I want to be a trusted bridge to the Lord, but I also want to be a trusted bridge to other creators, to sports teams, to makeup that I love, this lipstick. I like to be a trusted bridge that if Annie likes it or cares about it or believes in it, I can trust that would be healthy and good for me too.
That's great.
And so that's the gift of the network, is it's one of the ways I get to be a trusted bridge.
I love it. You know what? That sounds fun.
Hey.
So, okay, let me ask you this. When did the gospel become real for you? Let's go back. Where did you grow up in church? Did this happen like FCA or college, or what's that look like for you?
Yeah. So I got saved. I walked to the front of the church and I knew what I was doing in May of 1985. So literally 40 years ago.
Okay.
So I've spent 40 of my 45 years walking with the Lord.
Wonderful.
And so it has been real to me forever. I mean, I know that sounds crazy, but I can tell you, like in elementary school, one of my favorite books to read was a book called Sons of Thunder that was about James and John. I mean, it was because I grew up in the church I did, the family I did, the community I did. That was always part of my life. I had the boring testimony, quote, that people, but there was always sin. There was always things that so easily entangle, it wasn't without sin. The Gospels have always been real to me. They really came to life in a new way in 2020 because I started reading them every month. I was really struggling to read the Bible in a year. I'm just not that good. And so I would give up in March, like 2 years in a row, I gave up in March. And so then when at the end of 2019, before any of us knew what 2020 was going to be, at the end of 2019, I was like, I have got to do something shorter that gets me a win. So I was like, I'm going to read Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. If I read 3 chapters a day, I finish in a month. And so I did it and I finished and I was like, well, that was awesome. I'm going to do it again in February. So I did it again and I did it again in March and I did it every month of 2020 and it changed my life.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, to go back to the trusted bridge thing, what's come of it is in 2020, I was doing it. By mid of the year, I would put on Instagram, hey, if you want to read this with me this month, here's the plan. 2021, we created like a graphic that people could download.
Mm-hmm.
2022 and 23, we did let me think for a second. 23, we did a podcast where I read it every day. I think that started in 23 or 24. I mean, Let's Read the Gospels is a podcast that is me reading 3 chapters a day, every day, all year long, 30 days a month. And so people can tune in any day and hear 3 chapters of the gospel. And then my publisher got behind us and said, let's make a devotional that helps people go deeper in this.
Yeah.
And so that now there's a Let's Read the Gospels devotional guided journal that walks you through the 30 days. And so all of that, Rusty, is because I was a trusted bridge, right? Like I did something first and then I said, do y'all want to come along? And now over 10 million people have listened to the Gospels.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's unbelievable what God has done with that little idea that was for me because I couldn't finish reading the Bible. So from 2019 to now has been a very different experience with me in the Gospels because I have lived in them for 5 years.
Right. And you probably felt so bad for 2 years straight because you stopped in Leviticus, like most of us do, or Numbers, and we're like, I don't even care. And then to go back to the Gospels is great. I do have a copy of Let's Read the Gospels right here. I love this because I thought it was going to, when I got it, I thought it was going to be like a devotional. But no, it's a place to write down what it is that you've been reading and track with it all along. And goodness,
and we left enough lines on every page that you can do it more than once.
Yeah.
So the hope is that there's on every page, there's a date column, because if you do it in January, we want you to go back and make a different reflection in February and make a different reflection in March.
Right.
And just work your way through the 30 days. So that's what was life-changing for me, was interacting with the same stories over and over and over.
Okay, this is what I want to drill down on, because you're onto something here that most people don't understand if they don't do it repetitively. And that is that God says something to you different or highlights something different you didn't even see in the last month. You don't even have to go a year.
I mean, you should have seen. So when I was recording the podcast, I would sit here and record. My COO, Ashley, would sit next to me to edit me to make sure I didn't read words incorrectly. And then our engineer, Craig, would sit across from me and be a double set of eyes. I mean, we were careful. And the first time we read that the disciples, when Jesus mentioned the yeast and the Pharisees, that the disciples thought it was because they had forgotten to bring bread on the boat, we died laughing.
Right.
We were like, this is a hilarious story. Why does no one talk about this? And then we laughed about it for 12 months.
Right.
We did every month, but then every time you interact with Jesus healing every time you interact with him healing someone, every time you walk through the Beatitudes and the Sermon on the Mount where he says, it's better to cut your hand off, right? Like at points he says, and you just go, oh my gosh, it's complicated. Jesus is complicated to follow. That's one of my takeaways one of the months is I was like, this isn't easy if you actually do this.
Right. And I think that what happens is, and things like doing this, things like The Chosen, Yeah.
I love it.
I do too. And it kind of gives you an image of, all right, so that he's getting frustrated with the disciples in this moment. He's really ticked off at Peter at this moment or whatever. And you're kind of understanding the human side of Jesus. And now you pick up on that differently as you approach the Gospels.
Yeah, I'll tell you, I was sitting, your friend, Pastor Kevin, the pastor of my church, I'm on the teaching team with him. And I was teaching a couple of weeks ago. And I was reading Acts 12 to get ready for what I was teaching. And at the beginning of Acts 12 is when James is beheaded by Herod, and then Peter gets arrested. I am on my couch crying, Rusty, because I was like, Big James.
Yeah, Big James.
And that is all the Chosen's fault that I am crying over Acts chapter 12, because I'm like, oh, wait, that's not just a sentence I read anymore.
No.
That is someone I picture and going like, wait, what did John do? I mean, John ends up writing Revelation for us after, and 1st, 2nd, and 3rd John, after his brother is beheaded in front of him.
Yeah.
I mean, it made me cry on my couch.
Yeah.
It made me cry on my couch. Thanks be to God for The Chosen, showing us what we didn't know.
I blame you, Dallas Jenkins.
That's it. It's Dallas's fault.
You've helped and ruined us all. Yeah, and I'm doing something through Matthew right now, and just constantly looking through the lens of Matthew and just the little idiosyncrasies of what they've chosen to portray Matthew as, which is pretty brilliant as the account.
Have you ever heard Dr. Scott McKnight talk about Matthew, the book of Matthew?
No.
Oh, listen, you've got to listen, because that's like what he has done his entire academic, like that's his deepest gospel. And he says that the reason Matthew is the length that it is that Matthew would finish one page of papyrus paper, whatever, and each chapter would fill a page. And so it is the exact length it is because he would stop at the bottom of a page. I mean, it is, his knowledge of it will blow you away. It's awesome.
Oh, that is really great. What's next? I mean, you did the Gospels. Are you going to come back and do the epistles or the Torah? Is that next probably?
Right. Not yet. I mean, To me, if I spent my life encouraging people to read Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, that'd be a good use of a life.
I think so.
And so I haven't moved on to something else yet. I'm very available to it. I've said to the Lord, like, do you want me to keep reading? We read the book of Acts. When we finished, we did the entire year of 2023. And at the end of 23, until the spring of 24, the last thing we did last May that we recorded brand new was the book of Acts.
Okay.
Because we kind of wanted to be like, listen to this, like listen to what happened next.
Right.
And so we run that still sometimes on that, on Let's Read the Gospels. We mostly run Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. But so I don't know, Rusty. I mean, I am doing better at reading the whole Bible because I got good at reading the Gospels. So in 2021, I listened to Father Mike read the Bible in a year, which I loved because I got to hear the Apocrypha, and I never heard that before, and got to hear it from a Catholic priest, and I never really spent any time learning about Catholicism. So that was great. And so I'm very open to doing something else scripturally. I just don't know what it is yet. I mean, I'm nowhere near done talking about Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. I'm also kind of like, man, do we spend all of 2026 on That Sounds Fun doing Matthew and then Mark and then Luke and then John and just bring a bunch of different theologians? And so I'm not quite done with the Gospels yet, but I'm available to any other doors the Lord wants to open.
Well, that's probably a good place to be for all of us. Let me talk to you about your writing, because I think that you said you started with writing, and you talked about the difficulty in getting the book out there. So there's two kind of perspectives on this. Sometimes the publisher comes to you and says, I think you've got a book in you, and then you go through that grueling process, or you write your book and you take it to a publisher. What happened in you that made you think, I got to write this down? Did you enjoy it, or did you feel like I got something to say?
I grew up in it a little bit. One of my grandmothers was a librarian, and my other set of grandparents owned a bookstore. And I worked for them every Saturday. And so there was bound to be one of us that turned that around in our family and started writing them because everybody else was dealing with them too. So it's a little bit in my nature is that I grew up around books pretty actively. We weren't allowed to watch TV. And I didn't love hanging out with my sisters. And so I read a lot. But when it came to actually being an author, I started writing. My first book is called Perfectly Unique. It's for teen girls. It came out in 2012. I wrote it first in 2006 for the youth group at my church. Like I wrote it as a Bible study for the girls at my church. And at the end of that semester, one of the girls said, hey, will you print one more of these and staple it like a book so I can give it to a friend? And I was like a book? Huh. Did I just write a book? And so and then I went to a writer's conference. I kind of had the bee in my bonnet about, do I actually want to write books? And so I was living in Atlanta. I was teaching elementary school at Woodstock Elementary. And there was a one-day conference in Atlanta, a writer's conference for Christian writers. And I thought, I'm going to go to this. And this is either going to light me on fire, and I'm going to be like, I have to do this, or I'm going to walk away and be like, I want to keep teaching forever.
Right.
And by about hour 2, I was like, oh no, I'm about to give up my whole life. Yeah. I'm on fire for this. So that's how it started for me but then once I went to that writer's conference, then I wrote a book proposal. I got the first 3 chapters of the book really healthy and clean and started pitching it to agents. I signed with an agent. We pitched it to publishers. We got 47 no's. And then my agent and I quit working together too. And I thought the door had closed.
Right.
By now, this is 2010. We had been pitching the book since 2008. It's a very short sentence. When I tell it to you now, it did not feel short on those days of every day hoping you would get a book deal. I don't know a lot of people that publishers go to and say, do you want to write a book? Unless you're a pastor and an editor is in your congregation, that could happen. Right. Or if you're very famous and or have a very viral moment. Most people sit down and they have a story in their heart that they want to get out for their family and friends that they think might help. And they just start writing. And so that's kind of what happened for me after Perfectly Unique is they wanted me to write another book for teenagers. So by then it was just kind of, I was strapped to the front of a train a little bit. And I've been writing ever since then. And I still really love it. I will continue to do it for a while, I think.
I think it's such a great way to kind of, collect all that God has been doing and have to put it on a page, which sometimes is dreadful, but sometimes it's so helpful to read it back and say, wow, God really did something there.
Yeah, that's right. And the question to ask yourself for any of our friends listening who are thinking this through is, if you are doing this because you want to be famous and you want to make a lot of money, this is not the industry. There are too many people who have the ability to write a book right now. I mean, you can finish a book. Any of our friends listening can finish a book by Christmas and have it on Amazon and sell 1,000 copies. And that has not always been the case. And so the market is very full, but that is not bad. It just means know why you're doing it. Right. If you're doing it because you want your kids, and I mean, what I would give if I had a book from my grandmothers, I would love to read a book that either of my grandmothers had written.
Right.
And so if you have a story where you want to collect what God's done for you, sit down and write it. And even if it stays in your family and doesn't go beyond your family, that is still a heritage and a legacy you are giving them. And then if God opens more doors, he opens more doors, and it could become a career, and it could become more than one book. But also, you don't want any amount of fame that the Lord didn't hand in you.
That's
right. It is too expensive.
Manufactured fame is never good for you.
I cannot imagine. The money does not last, but the pain does.
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, I don't want it.
Yeah. Every good writer is there because they've been influenced by great books. So I'm going to ask you the dreaded question. Give me 3 of your favorite books. It's hard to narrow it down, but obviously the Bible. We've established that.
Of course. That would be, so that'll be the freebie. That'll be our center square. The Bible is true. The book I've loved the most in my life is called Christy by Catherine Marshall. Catherine Marshall? Is that right? Yes. In the book, the last name is Huddleston, but Christy by Catherine Marshall is a book about a teacher in rural Tennessee. And when I was in middle school, I read it, and it's what sealed the deal that I wanted to be an educator. Wow. And so I absolutely love that book. I read it so many times. And then I love Garden City by John Mark Comer.
Okay.
A lot of stuff that John Mark creates really impacts me and helps me shape my spiritual rhythms.
Right.
But Garden City was the first book that kind of talked about why we do the work we do and why we need to rest like we need to rest. And it was where I felt invited to start practicing Sabbath as a weekly rhythm. And it has been 10 years, and it has totally changed my life to actually set aside a day every week to rest and not work. It has literally changed. When people are like, how did you grow these companies? My answer is always tithing and Sabbath. The Lord did all of this, and I just gave him back a little bit of what he'd given me, and he expands the territories, not me. So Garden City, that's a huge one. And then I would say Celebration of Discipline. What a classic, right?
Yep.
It's just Richard Foster's incredible in 1,000 ways, but that book will just help it helps me. It's a resource now that I've read it a lot, but the first few times I read it, just this this is what celebration can look like as a discipline. And this is what fasting, whenever anybody wants to talk about fasting, I'm like, get Celebration of Discipline and start there. But you should be fasting. Jesus said, when you fast, when you pray, so I love Celebration of Discipline. I think that's one that has shaped me the most.
Okay, let's talk about Sabbath, because obviously John Mark Comer helped us all remember that word because we'd often overlooked it. You're single, you own multiple companies, you're teaching, you're writing, you have the potential to be busy 24/7.
That's right.
What have you had to do to make Sabbath a part of your life? Did you have to fight for that? Do you just carve it out of your schedule? And what's Sabbath look like for you?
Yeah. So again, the first thing I would say is it's a practice. Jeff Bethke tells the story of if you have a Christmas that doesn't go well and the family fights and the gifts aren't great, you don't cancel Christmas for the rest of your lives. You go, we're going to do it again next year.
That's good.
And the same is true with Sabbath. If it does not go, if it's not restful, if it's not fun, you just go, well, I'm going to keep practicing just like I do with prayer, just like I do with fasting, just like I do with the other rhythms that I think are built for us, right? Man is not built for the Sabbath. Sabbath is built for the man, right? So is what Jesus said. He's the Lord of it. So for me, if I am not traveling and speaking on a weekend, my Sabbath is a Saturday. Because I'm on the teaching team at church, I have high responsibility on Sundays, even when I'm not on stage. And so I can't call Sunday my Sabbath. And also part of what I get to do as someone who's not married yet is I get to sleep in. Yeah. And so I don't get to sleep in on a Sunday, but I can on a Saturday. And so if I'm not traveling, that's what it looks like. Now, if I am traveling, Rusty, the rhythm that has happened in my team, with my team, is as soon as someone books me for a speaking event. So this is a perfect example. This coming weekend, I speak on Saturday and on Sunday. There are two things that my assistant immediately does is she puts that on the calendar, and then she backs up and she adds a 2-hour window for each of my speaking events during my work week to prepare. Because otherwise I get on a plane and I have not thought about it and I have not prayed and I'm working on an outline on a plane. That may be okay for some people. That's not the discipline and rhythm I want to do for the events that I'm honored enough to get to speak at. That doesn't fit for me. So I have a 2-hour window during the week. And then at some point the next week, I have a day. And so this week I will speak Saturday, Sunday, and then I have Tuesday as my Sabbath, which is not traditional and no one else will be resting, but I will get my day for the week. And then I will rest on Saturday. That's okay. That's okay. It isn't like it's a 7-day expiration date, right? It's just once a week, I try to have a day of rest. And so for me, it is about not working. I don't do laundry. I don't do dishes. I don't do chores. I try to knock that out the day before, or the evening before. I like to cook one thing. It's like the only time I'm casually in my kitchen. So I like to make something. I usually listen to an audiobook. I don't engage on social media at all. That's been the fight, Rusty, is as soon as I open my phone, as soon as I open Instagram, I'm at work.
Sure.
So if I'm laying in bed at 6 a.m., I'm at work. If I open Instagram, if I'm sitting on my couch at 10 o'clock at night and Instagram is open, I'm at work. And so I actually have two phones. I have a work phone and a personal phone, which a lot of people do. I live part-time in New York, and a lot of my corporate friends have two phones. My work phone has Instagram, email, all that stuff, and I put it away when I get home from work.
That's a great idea.
And so there is just my personal phone is a phone. It has calling, texting, and that's about it. Yeah. But it is, but it can be with me on weekends, so I'm safe. I'm not like without connectivity. But it has changed my life. Resting once a week, and Pastor Kevin, our friend, he says a lot. God can do more with your 6 days than you can do with your 7. And that is proven so true in my life. We accomplish a lot. I am a high output person, and I only work 6 days a week.
He always sums it up so well.
I know. Isn't he great?
He's great. Okay, let's talk about your books and resources for your mini BFFs, and mini as in MINI. Talk to me about that.
Yeah, so not being married yet, not having kids, but being a teacher for 5 years in elementary school, I love kids. And I just didn't have any idea when my friends got married and had kids that they were like birthing new friends for me. I did not know that until it started happening. And I was like, wait, I like them too. Wait, you made new friends for me? And so that's really where it all started, is it's my friends' kids. Now it's my nephew and my nieces and nephews that my cousins have had that we're all really close. And so it really matters to me to write books. My long-term hope, Rusty, if people keep going into bookstores, is that you could walk into a bookstore and no matter where you walk, there's a chance you'll run into one of my books. So if you're in fiction, I want to write a novel someday. If you're in nonfiction, I'm there. If you're in religion, I'm there. And if you're in the kids section, I'm there. And so I've written 3 kids books so far. What Sounds Fun to You? Oh gosh, what's the second one? What Sounds Fun to You? So Happy to Know You. And then the one that just released is called Where Did TJ Go? Yeah. My sister and her husband lost a baby 2 years ago, almost 3 years ago now. And we needed a story to tell my other nephew to explain the loss of his brother, that his brother was never going to grow up. And so my sister and I wrote Where Did TJ Go? I wrote it first to help my nephew Sam. And then as we read it to Sam after TJ's passing, that my sister would call me and be like, hey, this page has too many words. Sam's bored. I'm like, well, what should I cut? So then we worked on it together. And then my publisher picked it up and was like, this is a real felt need. There are a lot of families who, 1 in 4 women have a miscarriage. Mm-hmm. So at least 25% of the women that sit at your church on a Sunday have experienced the loss of a baby. Mm-hmm. And there was not a gospel book to put in front of them to say, here's what you can read about. There is good news, even in sad stories. Yeah. Here's what heaven could look like. And after we see heaven, my nephew Sam is still sad that TJ is not there. And that's really good for kids to see. You can know the whole truth about how good heaven is and how good God is, and you're still allowed to feel sad about your loss.
Right.
And so now the book exists, the book that we needed, the book that families need. I mean, Rusty, you'll understand this as a pastor. We had a child in our community pass away the week after Easter. The pastor calls me that night. I'm already in bed. I see it the next morning. And he says, is there any way I could just come get a box of books? We're going to have to tell the whole children's ministry on Sunday that one of their friends has died. Can I get a box of books to pass out to families? And we said, yes, come on. And so already we are seeing God use it in emergency, tragic situations to say, hey, this is going to be really hard for your kids because this little friend that's been in Sunday school with them every week has died suddenly. Here's a book you can read that will at least walk you through some questions your kids might be asking about death of a child.
Yeah, it's brilliant. It's so well done. And it was so needed because most of those resources are written for parents, grief and processing and how to talk to kids, but not one you read along with your kids. It's just really, really great. A great resource for all of our listeners. Okay, I want to shift gears radically now, if we can. And that would be to talk about a couple of the things that you talked about with Carey Nieuwhof on his podcast, I love Carey. He's been on the show. He's a friend. And I always love it when you're on his show because you have such great stuff. But you went a direction on online ministry that a lot of us, some of us were on it before COVID. All of us had to be during COVID. And now out of COVID, I think a lot of pastors are kind of figuring out, what do I do with these digital disciples that I have that I don't see all that often? Is that okay? Do I lean into it, or do I just yell at them to get in the building? Or what are people looking for in the different venues? Because I loved what you said about that. Talk to us a little bit about what you're discovering about these two different places people are showing up.
Yeah, meaning online versus in person. Yeah. I think it's a really interesting time for us to kind of get our heads around this as people who are discipling other people on the internet.
Right.
Now, I don't think it is the most effective life change discipleship. There are 4 women I meet with once a month or so, and I have a mentor as well that disciples me. Then that is in person, offline, very personal. And I think that is actually the most effective discipleship. But we are in a season, if you Google it, we are in a season where God's favor is bringing people back to churches and bringing people into the gospel story and meeting Jesus. We are having an influx of across, England has the highest number of people calling themselves believers in like the last 200 years or something crazy.
It's a revival.
If we depend fully on those people that are experiencing God walking into a church, we are going to miss getting to disciple some of them.
Right.
And so the people coming in church are probably looking for community, and they're probably looking more for, and they're more traditional, most likely, like me, who's like, what do you mean you don't get up and go to church? Like my brain is not wired to not, I didn't know another way. But there are a lot of people who have experiences in a church. Maybe they worked at a church and are taking a break, or maybe they attended a church and moved to a new city and haven't found one, and they're out of that rhythm.
Right.
But they can watch online. I watched a friend of mine on social media yesterday talking about showing here's what we did on Mother's Day weekend. And they took a computer to the park and watched a church service in the park. Mm-hmm. And I think it's really important for us to, I don't want to call one right and one wrong. I don't want to call one better and one secondary, because the social media and YouTube and podcast, I think it's how the gospel is going to reach the world.
Right.
And so we want to be doing more we want to be sharing the gospel, and we want to be doing deeper work online. And so both of those really matter a lot to me. And one of the interesting things is, and this may be what you're referring to, I've had a lot of feedback about this one thing that I said about how in person, everybody in the church feels connected to everyone else sitting around them and to the pastor and to the worship team. Online, everyone feels connected to the pastor. Mm-hmm. Because that's the only person they see. Mm-hmm. And so there's a real opportunity for church staff to be helping monitor what pastors are getting as far as feedback on social media and in your DMs, not because of misbehavior, though. If you need, I have 5 people that have all my passwords to everything because I know myself. And I absolutely want people I want to think to myself, are you sure you want to send that? Before you send that, do you remember how many people on your team can see? You sure you want to order that book on Amazon? Before you order that book, you remember how many people can see what you do on Amazon? I mean, I need the boundaries as much as anybody, but it's more because there are people reaching out who need help, and your church has other resources besides you.
Right.
And so if there's a teaching pastor that's able to, or your executive assistant or the children's pastor, someone on your team, your community's group leader, able to sift through your DMs and go, hey, these 8 people want to be in an online small group. Let me just handle it. I'll connect them and do it. It's going to help us disciple more people online.
I love that. And I think that is the thing that kind of was the alarm that went off for me of, there's moments when in the past I would pride myself on, I don't even check social media, because I have it, but I don't check it. So I'm telling my kids like, hey, I'm not a slave to it like you all are. And then I think, I hear your comment and I'm like, oh my goodness, there's people on there that are crying out for help and I haven't even, listened to them. Yeah. For every pastor out there over the age of, let's just say 40, and I'm well beyond that, but let's just say someone doesn't really know exactly what they should be looking at and all of that. I mean, we're talking about Instagram, X. These are the main areas. I would say even in some cases still Facebook, where people are trying to connect with us. And I totally agree with you. We learned this as well when we did a rebrand around here. Most people are checking the lead pastor's socials before they check the church website. They're connecting that way first. What are, besides just giving your passwords to some other people, should there be a regular cadence of posting?
Sure,
should it be daily? Is that too much? What's the trend now?
Well, I would say, first of all, if you are looking for people who actually need help and you don't want to be a slave to your social media, people who actually need help are going to go in the private messages.
Okay.
Right. They're not going to say in a comment, hey, my marriage is falling apart and I can't find the church's phone number.
Right.
They're going to get in your DMs and say that. And so something that I don't read reviews of my books because I can't change them. They're already out.
Yep.
Not everything's for everybody.
Same.
I don't read. So I don't even read all the comments and all the things. I have a hard time dealing with the amount of DMs I get too. And I'm not a pastor. I'm not a church. I am a teaching pastor at Crosspoint, but I'm not a church pastor like that. Mm-hmm. And so for pastors, I would say that the one thing is you can keep, if for your mental health, for your ego, for it to stay in check, for your pride to stay in check, and for you to not be fully responding to the people who are criticizing you. If you need to stay out of the comments and everything, just give a side eye to the private messages on Facebook and the private messages on Instagram, because that is most likely where the people who need the most help are going to talk to you.
Perfect.
And so I will notice, you'll think this is so funny, Rusty. If I post about singleness, if I say, oh, I bet this is really, I did a thing on Easter when Easter is really lonely. And I just did some suggestions of when Easter's lonely. I got some comments for sure. My direct messages went banana pants because these men and women don't want to necessarily publicly say that how lonely they are, but they wanted me to know that they connected.
Wow.
And so that's going to happen when you share your sermons, when you share what the church is doing. So, I mean, when you say what's the cadence and what's the right thing to do, the number one thing I want for every one of my pastor friends is I want them to finish well. So whatever you need to do to finish well in the next 30 to 60 years, do that. If it's posting once a week, post once a week. If you want to post once a day, post once a day. Do whatever you need to do for your soul so that you get to finish what God has called you to. And there are times when social media feels like the thing that will keep me from finishing well.
Yeah.
And so I don't know that there's a right cadence. I don't know that there's a right time of day. Serve the people the way you feel like God is inviting you to serve them, and treat social media as secondary to your soul care. That's awesome. That is perfect. Exactly what I needed to hear. Okay, for all of our listeners that are thinking, I'd like to hear more of her. This is great. You can be found many places. Obviously, well, they should blow up your DMs. Like, that's enough, Andy. That's enough. Where can they find you? What's the best place? Yeah, the easiest place. Just any place you want to find me, it's Annie F. Downs, like fancy. Annie F. Downs. For Where Did TJ Go, the book about the loss of my nephew, if you go to wheredidtjgo.com, we have a couple of things there that are available. I can sign a book plate in loving memory of a child that your family has lost, and that's totally free. You just order the book wherever you want the book, and then we'll sign a book plate and I'll sign it and mail it to you. And then we also have bulk buys for churches or for organizations or for families. The thing that happened, Rusty, is we noticed when my nephew died, all these nonprofits came out of the woodwork, not knowing me, just knowing my sister's story, and would send us baskets and little gifts. And now we're getting to see people put Where Did TJ Go in all those baskets that are going to families.
That's great.
And so the publisher has done a thing where you can get the book 50% off and free shipping if you buy 25 or more. So that's just like a deal they've made so that all the nonprofits and churches that want to get it at a lesser price can do that. But Annie F. Downs is the easiest. AnnieFDowns.com is where all the books are. And if you're unmarried and want to be a part of Single Purpose League, that's like our gathering of single Christian women, kind of talking through like, what does it look like? If revival is happening, Rusty, and some version of revival is happening, what is the role for the fact that half of America is not married?
Right.
What's God doing? And what's our role as unmarried men and women in the midst of revival? I want to help lead people to that. If this is the season you're in, this can be an abundant life, and you've got an assignment in the midst of revival. And I don't want anybody to miss it, married or single. And so, also, I'll tell you one more thing. Sorry. We actually have a resource for pastors at anniefdowns.com/pastoring singles. We'll send you the link, but it's just a download. It's free. It's just 6 or 7 pages helping pastors and singles get on the same page. Because I'm sure you've experienced this, but so many singles tell us they don't feel seen by their church, and they also aren't having conversations with their pastors.
Right.
And so many pastors say, I wish I understood what my single friends are experiencing, but a lot of y'all went to seminary 20 years ago and you got married 20 years ago.
Right.
And this wasn't part of the conversation then. And so it's literally like the single people in your church are like, why can't you breathe on Mars? And you're like, I've never been to Mars. How? Not only can I not breathe there, I've never been there. And so we just made this little resource to kind of give what both sides want is for the other side to feel like they hear them. Right? Like pastors, I don't know a pastor who doesn't want the single people in their church to feel loved and cared for. Of course you do.
Absolutely.
And so we want to help with that if we can. So that resource is available for free for pastors and for singles to take to their pastors. It'll just help you think through the examples you're using, the events you're planning, your own theology of singleness and where singles are capable to lead and be a part of what you're doing in church. So that's for free. AnnieFDowns.com/pastoring singles.
Okay, so I've got to ask the question, does the F really stand for fancy?
Oh, no, it's like a complicated Swiss middle name, but I love saying it's fancy or fun. It just worked out great that I also picked to build my entire company around a word that starts with F. So it worked out great for me. So I like saying fancy because I love Reba. I might have been born just plain white trash, but fancy was my name. I just love it. Oh,
just don't let me down.
That's right.
Love fancy. Okay. Annie, this has been fantastic. Thank you so much for making the time for us. We loved having you on and want to send everybody to your many podcasts and books and great resources. You're blessing a lot of people. So keep up the great work. Thank you.
And I'll keep resting too. I promise. I'm going to finish well, Rusty. You're not going to lose me before the end of the race. I'm doing everything I can to finish well. So thanks for all you do. You help the rest of us to be able to be who we want to be too. So I'm really grateful.
Thank you so much. Such great stuff from Annie F. Downs. Now we know the middle name is Fancy. So make sure that you reach out to her and say thank you for being on the podcast. Blow her up on her DMs. I know she'd love that. And pick up her book. Let's Read the Gospels. What a great way to process this together. Hey, we're back next week with brand new content. Can't wait for you to join us. So we will do that then. And as always, keep it simple.